cannot stand each other. My father is from Mexico and my mother is from El Salvador. This has created super awkward family reunions. To represent this, I brought in a dictionary. I totally forgot. But I brought this in because I feel like the words that we choose to say is what truly connects us to one another. And this dictionary has a lot of words, but I feel like it fails to really capture what's in between, just as society fails to captivate who multicultural people really are. Being multicultural, for the most part, forces people to choose one identity over the other, but in choosing to do so, one is willingly ignoring a part of themselves. So within my speech, I will begin by reviewing with you the role that language plays, and then I will continue by sharing with you the impact that living in the States has had on the way I communicate, and I will conclude by revealing why I refuse to identify with just one culture. So, the Spanish language is vibrant. It has a kind of conviction to every sentence and word that's articulated. In Central America, there are a variety of kinds of people, and for the most part, they are all Spanish speakers. The kind of Spanish they speak differs. And if you can't imagine this, then think of the way of how people from Brooklyn speak differs from how the way of people from Southern states speak. They both speak English, but not exactly the same kind. And that's what it's like in Central America. Mexico and El Salvador are separated by Guatemala. They both speak Spanish, but not the same kind. So you can only imagine why there's so many misinterpretations between the two. And the Spanish that many first-generation youth speak here in America varies because depending on our families, more or less Spanish is being spoken. And some of us don't even speak Spanish anymore. But since we're supposed to speak this language, we are automatically accused of forgetting our roots because of how altered our Spanish may have become within this environment. This ultimately leads us from forming negative emotions towards our ethnicities because we're constantly being degraded. So now that I shared with you the role that language plays, I continue by sharing with you the impact that living in the States has had on the way I express myself. So my Spanish, like many others, is considered what is called fresa, which is just a fancy way of just degrading the way I speak. When I was a child, the only language I spoke was Spanish, and as I started grade school, learning English was mandatory. However, I picked up on English really quick, so by the time I was in second grade, I was taken out of ESL and considered to be a fluent English speaker. This was both good and bad because in becoming fluent in English, my Spanish became even more manipulated than it already was. And I realized as I grew older that speaking Spanish wasn't enough to be considered an authentic Latina, and I discovered this through the reactions that others had upon hearing me speak. This has always curtailed me from truly connecting from my backgrounds because the way I express myself has never been enough. So now that I share with you the impact that living in the States has had on my Spanish, I can conclude by revealing why I refuse to identify with just one culture. So after having people poke at me, trying to figure out where I stand in this whole Mexican-Salvadoran war, I have came to the obvious conclusion that I am not just Mexican, I am not just Salvadorian, and I'm obviously not just American. My Spanish does not connect me to any Central American country, and my English will never be good enough. My family is the least traditional family that you will come across, but this doesn't mean that I have forgotten my roots, because I'm constantly being reminded of them through every smirk and insult that I am gifted. But the main reason why I refuse to identify myself with just one culture is because if I was to do so, I would willingly ignore either my mother, my father, or even myself. And to conclude, being multicultural forces people to choose one identity over the other, but in doing so, one is willingly ignoring a part of who they are. Within my speech, I began by reviewing with you the role that language plays. I then continued by sharing with you the impact that living in the States has had on the way I communicate. And I concluded with you by sharing with you why I refuse to identify with just one culture. So this dictionary will never be able to really captivate my language, but that doesn't mean that this world isn't going to be able to understand that pure blood has nothing to do with that.